Hey,
Hi, Sam. How are you? Hello,
good.
sir. Good evening. Gyani, sir. How are you? Hello, sir. Sadish, sir.
Good evening, good evening, sir. Dr. Hani, sir. Good evening, Dr. Kodan Raman.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Varun, sir.
Good evening, Sam, sir. Good evening, Giridhar, sir. Good evening, Adel, sir.
Good evening, sir.
After a long time, we are seeing our Director General. I saw him just half an hour back in the
meeting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Sam, sir, is putting all his efforts to get into the more and more of hospitals getting inside.
Yeah.
I think it's not Sam.
Tamil Nadu has been our leader in the HPI right in the beginning, 3 years. Topper all the time.
Yes, sir.
In between, it went to slightly dip. Now I think you are there, Samir is there, Adel is there, Satish is there. I think you can all, of course, you are already doing it very well.
Yes, sir.
Namaste, Mr. Joseph. Namaste, Mr. Rao.
They have come now.
You're on mute, both of you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Yosef. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Nice.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening, Joseph, sir.
Good evening. Yes. You're starting at 5, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. So our session is between 5:30 and 6, sir.
Okay. You don't mind me?
Yes, sir.
joining?
You can log in later. No issues.
So I get an idea of what it is all about.
Of course, sir. Of course.
How many members do you expect to join for the session?
So 20, sir.
20. Okay.
But otherwise, this is telecast on YouTube also.
I know.
Yes, sir.
So some time ago, I had come to Chennai. That was when I was with IRD and then addressed a group.
Yes, sir. Anytime you drop in, you can ping us, sir. We will have a one-to-one meeting also.
Sure. So now I'm prepared
to host you, sir.
We understood you are taking care of the automobile insurance as well.
No, see, as a general insurer,
Okay.
one is doing all business, including motor, fire, projects, insurance, the whole range. But there are exclusive health insurers like Star,
Okay.
Care Insurance, where they do only health insurance.
Yes, sir.
When you say non-life, it includes all lines of business other than life insurance. So that is why this non-life designation comes.
Okay.
Looks like a couple of folks have also logged in on the YouTube ecosystem. So I think it's 5. Shall we give another 2 minutes or shall we start?
We can wait for a couple of minutes, sir. No issues.
Bhavatrani, if you could post on the various groups that it started, and if folks can join, please, that would be helpful.
Shall we start? I think
Yeah, let's
20
start.
plus are there. So,
Good. So thank you everybody for joining. I'm sure more and more folks will be joining in the next hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. It's great to see many of our member hospitals across the state, but more importantly, it's also great to see many of the speakers who hopefully will share wisdom over the next 2 hours with you. Join us. This is an AHPI Tamil Nadu production, I think is the right way of saying it, because it has taken a fair bit of time, like any movie, to find fruition, to find an audience, and more importantly, at times to find suitable directors, producers, and actors. So I think with that, let me jump in. Look, I think one of the key topics across most of our AHPI discussions in our state has been what is happening with insurance. We're having challenges with a government scheme, whether it's CGHS, we're having queries about the Ayushman Bharat, we're having a lot of pressure from insurance. And what we thought is, let us pull a forum together and a problem-solving opportunity to kind of like get many of your questions answered today, as well as bring some of the experts from across the country, from people who are part of the policy making, people who sit on the fence of the payer side, as well as some of the folks who will actually give us some smart ideas and growth hacks, as we call it, to sometimes make ourselves more relevant for insurance. So that is the purpose of today. We have a number of speakers, and one of our partners in crime and one of the key speakers that I have the next 25 minutes to share some time with is Dr. Giridhar Gyani. Actually, he doesn't need much of an introduction. He is one of the godfathers of healthcare in India. He has put quality in healthcare on the map. He has put, I think, in the last couple of decades, the importance of not only patient safety, quality health standards, and many other components that go into represent patient responsibility and care into our health systems. The person who brought NABH to life in India and who designed it, as well as brought many of our hospitals together to play a role within that ecosystem. So a highly inclusive leader. He's won multiple lifetime achievement awards, from the lifetime quality professional to the FICCI healthcare leader lifetime and multiple others. So I would be doing a great disservice to give that anything else. Dr. Gyani also has the I think we've had the privilege of having him as our AHPI Secretary and Director General for a while. He's played a key role in changing and modifying many of the policies that have been representative. And he's also been part of the group that was on special commission to help the PMJ scheme and many of these national health schemes come to life within the health system. So I think we have no better person to kind of represent a fundamentally simple question, which is, for those of you who are not familiar, what are we hearing from our hospitals around the country, and what are the government doing, and where is the government's mindset around the insurance sector? So I think with that, Dr. Gyani would love to hear some simple views, and then we can have a discussion. Please.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Samir Mehta, and you know, this chapter of Tamil Nadu to me, you know, it has been the most vibrant chapter, I will say. You know, the Tamil Nadu has been vibrant all through. You know, I have been saying that, you know, the southern India, for example, when I was being interviewed for Quality Council of India, that was way back in 2003, I mentioned that time itself that southern region is number one in terms of productivity, quality, and things like that. And the person who was interviewing me was from the western region. He was taken aback because he thought I will say western region, because that time Mumbai, Pune were always the leading states. But anyway, I was able to tell him why I am saying South Zone. So that is the case about Tamil Nadu. And, even recently, my own experience, I just went to 1 or 2 hospitals in Tamil Nadu as a patient rather, just I wanted to have a bit of checkup here and there. And I had to say that, to the people who were with me from the North Zone Delhi, very senior professional, I told them the empathy which you could see, the way they were showing on me and my colleague, let me name it Arun Agrawal, So actually, I really felt that empathy factor is definitely superior in the hospitals in Tamil Nadu. I am saying Chennai, and of course, I have seen Coimbatore also from that point of view. So this is about, that we have that high regard for the Tamil Nadu, in general. Now, coming back to the question of Samir. Yes, I have been, participating in the meeting many times directly, sometimes indirectly by sitting at the second level of bench, sometimes in the front, starting from the older planning commission, then to Niti Aayog. And when the new government came in 2017, because I would like to start from there rather than going too much behind. No. In 2017, you saw this government came in 2014 and healthcare appeared.
Okay, want to hear you come, but not very loud.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the healthcare was on their agenda because in their, BJP, they released that National Health Assurance Mission, that time, they had built into their declaration. And so in 2017, they brought out the new health policy after a gap of 15 years. That was the one thing. And immediately you saw in 2018, without much of the preparation, I'm saying so in openly, they launched the Ayushman Bharat, because Prime Minister was in hurry, and that's the way it launched. Now, this of course task was given to the Ministry of Health that time, and particularly Director General Health Services, to define the number of procedures which will be covered in this scheme, what should be the rates and all that. And now I have no problem in naming the person also. Dr. Athani, who was that time officiating Director General of Health Services, was assigned the task of fixing the rates for Ayushman Bharat. This gentleman did a good work because he took the CGHS rates prevailing, then he studied a bit of the market rate, consulted people here and there, because every time he was being told, because now I can say so because he's not there and it is a past is past. And so he used to participate sometimes in conferences along with me. So he used to mention to me that, everybody is telling me to come out with the rates actually yesterday, because they were not sure when the Prime Minister will actually announce it. So that used to be the pressure. That is, I'm talking of March, April, May of 2018. So this person prepared good rates, and some rates were 20% higher than the CGHS. Let me tell you this point. Accidentally, it happened that this man had to just meet the Secretary Health that time, and he was asked, what is this all about? And when he showed the rates, he got, I don't know whether I should say that, but he got a rebuff from the Secretary Health. I'm not naming who's the Secretary Health, you can find out. And, this man obviously got, perturbed, and he went down, and I'm told that exactly or almost he cut down by 50%. So this is the way, we fix up the rates in government, absolutely. And anyway, the rates then were then sent to Niti Aayog. And I'm sure Vinod Paul that time did realize that rates were too low. But he also kept it quiet because rates had come from Director General Health Services and a scheme was to launch anytime, they were not knowing when. Finally, it was announced on 18th September. So really speaking, they had enough time to correct it. But as I told you, nobody dared to disturb because they didn't want, that rates not to be there when the Prime Minister announces. So you got the rates what you got. And because this is the way I have been quoting a number of times in the press also that no scientific study was done and ad hocly these rates were kept. Anyway, it went on and only 2 months back you saw the rates were 400 procedure rates were revised little bit upwards. I will say little but at least upward. And this is the scheme which actually is the, you can say green-eyed or blue-eyed scheme of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister and things like they are not bothered about CGHS. For them, Ayushman Bharat is the scheme they will like to focus. And today, if you see the website of Ayushman Bharat, they have issued already 17 crore, 170 million cards. Card holders are already there. Okay. Now, this, if you convert into the population, they are saying for one card, 5 members are allowed. But suppose even you take 4 or 3.5 members, that means 50 crore or 500 million population already has been covered under this scheme. This is a big number. Okay. In fact, this is the target which they have set it that 40% of the population, they will like to get covered under this Ayushman Bharat. That was the initial design by the Prime Minister's office. Why I am saying all this to you, that the way things are going, all governments are going to be aggressive. You see now the elections, you must be hearing, though elections are in the north, but you know the television. Every party is saying this free, everything free is being given. Similarly, healthcare also is being given free by the central government. Some of the state governments are more aggressive. They are going more and more, people are trying to cover more and more population. So the question is, we will not be having much of the cash paying patient. If I have already told you that 50 crore population is covered under the Ayushman Bharat, as compared to that, there are 40 lakh beneficiary under the CGHS. Because if you go by this of course is official number because they have 13 lakhs 84,000 beneficiary, the employee, including 6.5 lakhs from the serving and 7.15 lakhs the pensioner. So total become 13 lakhs 84,000. Now, but number of beneficiary for family and all that is 40 lakh. 50 lakhs is the beneficiary under the ESI scheme. And then if you come to the other scheme which we have got is, that is ECHS for the central government. There you have got 13 crore beneficiary. So all in all, if you put together, you will reach to a figure of 64 crores. 64 crore population today is covered under these 3 or 4 schemes. Ayushman Bharat, CGHS, ECHS and ESI. ESI, of course, number of people also go to their own ESI hospital, so they may not come to us. But what I'm saying, because of this aggressiveness, government will like to push for universal health coverage. That means providing providing healthcare to the people at the rate which they can afford. And that's where they have arrived at that 40% population is below poverty line and they will give them free of cost. Okay. Nobody is thinking of co-payment for the above poverty line. Some states have done it. Ideally speaking, they should actually now introduce co-payment for above poverty line, middle level income group, high income group, something like that they should introduce so that the burden of financing is less on the government. But they are not doing. Everybody wants only free. So the issue here is now, because government will be aggressive on this issue, we have to be prepared that 50 or 55, tomorrow it becomes 60% population will come to us through the government schemes. Okay, that is one. About the private insurance, I think I will leave this to Sameer to cover, because this subject, he may be knowing little better than me. But my take at this point of time is that healthcare scheme, because of the universal health program being pushed by the government, we will be now, okay, now last point from my side is definitely they want universal health coverage, but this would have been easier done if they had their own hospital. That means public hospital would have been enough to take care of this kind of 1.3 billion population, and they would have been giving them free or whatever cost. But because they do not have, so they are buying healthcare from us. So nothing wrong. It is a good PPP. Government wants to provide free healthcare. They are procuring from us, paying to us. But at what cost? At what condition? These issues have been pushed below the carpet, and that is what we have been fighting. There has been some little success, but I think we will have to be together. Then only we will be able to make some impact. We will have to go to the government with the data, with the objectivity. Same thing is true about the private sector, about the GIPSA. You know how the GIPSA fixes up the rate. So this is from my side as an opening remark. Let Sameer come in, and then in the end, if something else is required, I will come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Gyani-ji. I think clearly, first of all, there is no playbook in the world that quite is like India, right? People talk about what is proven, what works in the United Kingdom, what is the system in the United States, what is in different parts of Europe. And I think there is no playbook. And as we learned during COVID, sometimes we show the best of the world and sometimes we show the worst of the world as well. I think with the private insurance, we've clearly seen the number of providers. There are about 50 insurance companies and TPAs that effectively control a relatively significant population for private. And yet the rates, when we talk about them, and hopefully we'll have that a little bit better explored in the second and third sessions today, are almost let us figure out what the government scheme or prevailing central government scheme is and put a premium on top of that. So it almost acts as a +1. And specifically because now we have one of our sponsors also join us, we have to thank specifically our Vitreya Tech team and Mrinal specifically for sponsoring today's event. So thank you, Mrinal. I think they have a very interesting technology that's at least made our life at Dr. Mehta's a little bit better. So for that also, thank you. It's very rare to find good insure tech that works in healthcare that actually makes our payments come on time and help us sometimes also with rate discussions. So that is quite rare. But if I come back to the private ecosystem, the reality is there are about 20 companies that are in the private that control pretty much the 80% of the market. And I think most of you know the big names. Most of our hospitals are already tied into them. The challenge that we're beginning to face is they don't upgrade rates very often. And when they do upgrade the rates, they tend to use a very opaque process to kind of have a discussion with most of our private hospitals. What is a fair rate to pay to us? There is no costing. There is no objective exercise. Thankfully, now, at least through the government, we're beginning to hear these terms like if you're accredited with NABH, if you have a teaching hospital recognition with the National Board of Examination, if you have other strong tie-ups across the state, that at least gives you a degree of credibility that you're a strong healthcare provider. Because otherwise, most private hospitals, the way they used to do it, at least from my point of view, having had multiple chats with owners and sometimes the actual hospital network operators, has been, let me go to talk to certain hospitals. I will look at the lowest rate and then talk to the next hospital with that lowest rate. And I don't look at the quality standards. I don't look at the service level standards. I'm kind of like putting that all in one box. And whether you are sitting in Delhi, you get a different rate, whether you get in Chennai, a different rate. And what we started to see is it's almost like by dividing us, we are effectively kept down. And the challenge with that, as many of you know, that when healthcare insurance starts becoming a much higher percentage of our billing rate and our total cash flow, if you are not paid to cover your sustainability or sustenance, you won't survive. And I think that is what we are at least beginning to feel. We've been in the business as Dr. Mehta's for now 89th year will happen in another week for us. And when we go through that, we survived the British Empire to a large extent. We survived some very tough times during early India. We survived tough times during the various governments of India and the various evolutions of change that our country and state has to do. We can also joke that we survived floods, demonetization, and COVID. And the hope is, I touch wood, COVID is still there. But the reality is all these moments for us have been quite challenging when you look at it from a lens of the payer, because there have been times at the start of COVID, I think all of you will remember April and May, when many of your hospital bills were tough to pay. And many of the insurance companies weren't clear on what their clearance for COVID was going to be. So we were treating customers and hoping many of them would pay us, right? In the very early days, we were hoping many of the insurance companies would clear the COVID rates. That we were doing that on a leap of faith. And the reason I bring this up is because we're beginning to see now that as the government and as private sectors, the information arbitrage is less. And also hospitals are beginning to talk to each other, because today you have WhatsApp and many tools. That capacity for us to communicate with each other has increased, but you have a very concentrated payer. If there are 50 people who pay you, and there are 80,000 people who provide the service, it is better in the interests of the 80,000 people, at least they talk to each other more often. Because otherwise, the lowest rate from some small hospital that does not believe in quality may be used to set the rate of a very high quality, high service level institution sitting in a metro city, which perhaps will not help the vast majority of us, because India has this diaspora of first world quality at sometimes developing world market rates. And I think that we should break, because I think there are fair rates for fair services. And just like any other sustainable institution and industry, we have to sometimes fight for that reality. So when we look at the private sector, the discussion, and this hides a lot of the government things, they say around 25% is private sector, but the reality is, I think it's a bit less in private. I think it's a bit more in government too. Now, most hospitals are beginning to go anywhere from 30% to some that are at 70% that are insurance led. And I think we're going to see that percent grow further and further. So for cash flow, this will become an issue. And we're seeing clearly a lot of these private insurers saying, I will clear your bill if you say that you'll give a 3% discount or 5% discount now, I'll clear your bill within 25 days. And the reality is 25 days later, when you check, they haven't cleared the full bill. They've still cut some components. So I think this opaqueness, this lack of arbitrage from us is beginning to be quite expensive. Now, the interesting news for most of us, and as Dr. Gyani will verify, most of the government IRDA policies, it's almost one of the most regulated industries, even much more than our healthcare providers. So in the government original mandates, there are penalties for late payment. There are penalties for non-payment. There are penalties for non-full payment. They have to explain themselves. But this in reality for many of our hospitals doesn't seem to work, because when we are desperate, we're going to accept anything. And that is a little bit of the stark reality. So Dr. Gyani, you were there in the recent discussion. Every year there are supposed to be updates to rates. Do you think most of these, both government and private institutions, actually set rates fairly? Do they update them regularly? Or you think, I mean, we heard Tamil Nadu, for example, still hasn't updated, with 6 different updates from the central reference scheme for Ayushman Bharat, that health benefit plan. We've not had one update from day zero. How do we influence things like these at a macro level? Because at an individual hospital level, we can't do anything, sir.
Yeah. You see, we are all aware about that CGHS rate after 2014 have not been revised. Ayushman Bharat rates came out in 2018 and only got revised in 2021, that too only for 400 procedures. But when they talked to us last time where you were present in that meeting, surprisingly to me, they said that now we are going to have a scheme where rates will be reviewed every year. Now, that was obviously someone among us said there is music to our ears, that if this is the approach of the government, I think this will be a wonderful thing to happen. Now, if they can do it, obviously, then we can also make sure that CGHS, ECHS, they also review it every year. And if they do it, then we can also expect private sector also to review the agreement. Now, the trend has to start from somewhere, and nothing better than the Ayushman Bharat. One more point I want to tell here, that we know that if there is a clause of interest on the delayed payment, I can assure you at least the government officials will be forced to pay in time, because in the government, if there is a delay in payment, if the government has to pay the interest, that the official will be taken to the task. That is why we learned during this discussion that this clause of interest is built into the central scheme, and I am familiar with that when this scheme was designed. But no state government they have quietly deleted that clause, because ultimately Ayushman Bharat is being operated through the state. So now the question in front of all the states, including Tamil Nadu, is that we are now going to get hold of the central agreement or the scheme, and then going to pressurize the state to include the interest clause. If you can succeed that, nothing like it. Otherwise, I think all of us should be prepared to go to the court and in the very near future. This is from my side.
Thank you. So I think we finished the first session. First of all, thank you, Dr. Gyani. I'm sure there'll be questions. If any of you have questions, feel free to post it in the chat. And Bhavatrani, who is our very able and leader for the Secretariat in Tamil Nadu, thanks a lot for pulling this together. If you can post anything that comes from the YouTube streaming also, so that we are able to deal with that. But I think with that, let us pass the baton to the next group. And we have Dr. Kodanraman, who is going to share time with, I think, team, Mr. Joseph and Mrinal. I think Mr. Joseph is somebody who actually also doesn't need much introduction, because he's been on the payer side for a long time. So I think, Kodan, can I pass it? First, actually, let me pass it to Edel. Hey, first, a little bit of a pitch for what we're doing in AHPI Tamil Nadu, because we finally got a good audience. So Edel, why don't you tell them what we've been doing in Tamil Nadu, please?
Thanks, Sam. Let me quickly share my screen. So good afternoon, everybody. Sam, could you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everybody. So quickly, let me introduce to you what AHP Tamil Nadu has been doing the past few years. AHP Tamil Nadu is part of the central organization of AHPI, and the central part has around 19 state chapters, and Tamil Nadu is the only chapter which has been registered as a society itself. And over the past 5 years, we've been we have achieved a lot, which has actually paved way to several central initiatives as well. One of the first one would be the violence against doctors. We had filed a case in the Supreme Court, which to make sure that the doctors, the violence against doctors in hospitals is made a non-bailable offense. And the Supreme Court also did issue a notice to the central government to ensure that this is implemented as a law. We also, in the state, we also made sure our members are protected against suspension of TNCMCHS scheme, the state insurance scheme, because there was a lot of complaints from the members that the local authorities were threatening them that the CM insurance scheme would be suspended if they didn't comply to certain norms. So we did file a case and we got protection. And also that is connected to the costing analysis. We also had another case filed in the Madras High Court, insisting and praying that the state government do a costing analysis, forming a committee with all the stakeholders, do a costing analysis of all medical procedures, and then fix the rate for the CMCHS procedures. But that case is still pending. We are yet to hear some final order over there. But for now, we have been protected. The members of AHPA has been protected without, against any action, stern action from the authorities. And third is on the minimum wages. Again, we did get a stay order from the court. We approached the court and we did get a stay order. And we also insisted that the state government form a committee involving AHP as one of the members and other stakeholders to fix the minimum wages. I think the state government had also, say a year back, they had reformed the committee, and the process is still on. It has not been decided yet. And again, AHP has been actively advocating for the issue on the case of fire safety and ramp provisions in hospitals. Because again, this came as a shock to a lot of hospitals who, from the central government and the courts. So we were involved in one of the expert committees of the state government of Tamil Nadu, and we have made a contribution, and that is still pending. The case is is still on. And AHP Tamil Nadu, along with the central organization, we are working on the recovery of CHS dues, and Dr. Gyani and Dr. Alexander Thomas, they have been striving hard to get back the CHS dues of all member hospitals. And we are also working on the revision of GIPSA rates. The removal of GST on medical costs is also on an agenda. We're trying to ensure that that happens, and also dispensation of TDS on all insurance payments. Whenever the insurance makes a payment to the hospital, they do deduct TDS, and we are striving hard to make sure that is avoided. And there are other initiatives like the think tank initiative and the legal consulting. We also provide legal consulting to all our member hospitals in case they have any issues with the state authorities or with the patients, or any violence or grievance from the patients. So we also have a patient grievance redressal forum to address that issue. And we also organize under HPI Tamil Nadu. We have a lot of other training programs which reaches out to the vast majority of the healthcare staff of all the member hospitals. So these are some of the issues and initiatives from the Tamil Nadu chapter of HPI. So thanks, Sam. Over to you.
Thanks. And for those who don't know, Adel leads our membership committee across the state, and he's also one of the stalwarts at Madurai Meenakshi Mission. And I think that's one of the special things about our AHPI ecosystem here, is that we are not just a central city coordinated activity. We come from the different regions across Tamil Nadu to make life a little bit better for our members, who 4,300 of them sit in various nooks and corners of the state. Some in major cities, some in more beautiful parts of the city with a little bit more countryside and mountainous areas. So I think the highlight is we're by the sea, so we at least get to see some fishes every now and then. So I think thanks, Adel. Look, I think the reason you want to play a role is because we're clearly seeing by togetherness, as you heard in session 1, we're able to actually do something productive and useful. I think when I pass the baton to Dr. Kodan, you'll start hearing it also from the insurance point of view, what's changing. So Dr. Kodan is our secretary head of Tamil Nadu. He actually does most of the work. He also is the lead for our government relations cell of AHPI Tamil Nadu. So Kodan, it's up to you, please.
Thank you, Sam. So on behalf of our AHPI and Director General Girdhar sir and our National President Alexander sir and our AHP Tamil Nadu President Samir sir and Satish sir. I extend our warm welcome to PJ Joseph sir, who has been a senior retired official from IRDA. He has some rich 4 decades of experience in insurance sector, and he has worked for a long time in Chennai as well for United India and served many general insurance companies in the past. So we are very glad to have you, sir, on board. We are going to listen to you for another 15 minutes about your experience in health insurance, the common issues faced by hospitals per se. Also, we would like to know about what are all the amendments in the card, and for national level insurances like Ayushman Bharat, CGHS, and some CBSE policies. We also wish to curb the hospital side's anguish regarding the rates being beyond the optimized cost rates. So kindly throw some light on all these things, sir.
Good evening to all. Let me at the outset say that I have not been part of the industry or the regulations for the last 3 years to be exact, and so I'm an independent person in that sense with some experience in insurance, and I can understand the anguish of the medical community, healthcare providers, in not getting what they believe is the right price for the services which they are rendering. From you look at from the insurer's perspective, what does insurance do? It's pooling of funds from various policyholders and then using that money to pay the claimants who are your patients. So at the end of the day, the pool should be adequate to pay the claims plus the margin expenses and for the distribution cost. So if you look at from that perspective, the insurer's point of view, it's not that they have deep pockets and they can pay anything that the healthcare provider is asking for. And the second point is that as far as individual insurance is concerned, there is a contract of insurance, and they have to make sure that the payments are made within the 4 walls of the contract, because the contract will say this can be covered or this can be paid, and there are exclusions. So once they have to ensure that the payment is within the terms of the contract, and therefore the requirements of submission of various documents, etc. But having said that, I'm not saying that there is no room for discussion, negotiation, etc., and arriving at a number which is mutually acceptable. But from the insurer's perspective, they can't price the product as they wish. The pricing is controlled or is approved by the regulator, which is based on, again, the claims experience and other expenses that they have. So the more the claims, the more the cost of insurance, and then that is going to affect the demand for insurance possibly, because as it is, you find that large number of a large section of the population is still uninsured. Those who are below the poverty line probably get covered under the Ayushman Bharat scheme, and then those who are employees of the state, central government and state government, they have their own scheme. Then the ESIS scheme. But apart from that, and those are not under the CCC database, there is a problem. So how do you get them to buy insurance? That is a question. So you can't afford to keep the price of insurance too high, because that they are the middle class or lower middle class who cannot afford to pay huge amounts as premium. So that is one issue. But I think the challenge today is getting the monies out of the insurer in time. If you keep aside the tariff rates or the price which has been negotiated at a global level with a representative body of the insurers, apart from that, on a day-to-day basis, are your claims being processed in time? If it is not being processed in time, why is it happening? Are the pre-auths coming in time? Are the claims being processed and approved in time? And is the payment coming in time? These are the 3 issues. So where does the problem lie? If it is, what I understand, large number of claims or majority of the claims do get settled in reasonable time. But the rest of the claims, a small portion doesn't get settled for a period of time, a longer period of time. And how do we overcome this problem? I think as it is, the government also is aware of this, and they are looking at technology to overcome this problem. We are talking of electronic transfer of documents, and there are already looking at creating a platform. There are private entities which are coming out with solutions. We have the group insurance, the Tamil Nadu scheme, where already there is an application and virtually everything is done online in electronic form. So we have the experience. How do we ensure that every hospital, whether it's part of the scheme or not, is able to replicate this and do this with the TPAs or the insurance companies directly, and thereby speed up the entire process. So one is speeding up the process and ensuring, and second is the concern of the insurer would be about misuse of the facility. So when you are talking of misuse, how do you instill confidence in the insurer that everything that is coming is genuine and that there is no misuse of the system in terms of over treatment or in case pure fake claims. I'm not saying that these are things which everyone is indulging in. Even if it is a small majority or negligible portion of the healthcare ecosystem, the insurer has to ensure that such a thing doesn't happen, because it's a leakage, and eventually that leakage will add to the premium, because the cost has to be passed on to the individual insureds. And therefore, they would like to ensure that there is no hanky-panky, everything is above board. And how can the healthcare professionals or entities in the ecosystem ensure that such a thing doesn't happen? So like organizations like yours, how do you convince the insurers that, okay, all that we are doing is above board, everything is fine? So that if that confidence comes, probably there is a room for further negotiation in pricing, because then there is a room for the insurance company to offer something more. So basically, then since both of you are in a commercial activity, insurers have to make profit. If they don't make profit in their business, they can't remain in the scene. And it's a very highly competitive scene, unlike I think in the case of hospitals. They have to be very competitive and have to comply with the regulatory requirements. They have to comply with the contract obligations. That being the case, the room for increasing the rates is very limited unless they can see more efficient operations, both at the healthcare provider side and at their own side. And how do we bring it about? How do we have a dialogue where, when you say dialogue, both parties are prepared to listen to each other instead of somebody talking and others having to listen. Both parties are prepared to listen to each other. Which are the entities with whom you can have a conversation? Is it the DA Council, or is it GIPSA, or any other entity? Like Dr. Gani was saying that you have to make a beginning with the Ayushman Bharat scheme. If the rates there are improved, or if they set in place a system whereby they increase the rates at periodic intervals, then I think the insurance industry will have to follow suit. So maybe you need to start a discussion at that level to ensure that there's a mechanism in place to revise rates at periodic intervals. I'm not saying annually, but at a reasonable period of time, there is an increase. And that could set in motion a reaction at the insurers level as well, to look at their system of arriving at the prices. As far as hospitals are concerned, I think they need to get the NABH accreditation. When the insurers would like to pay according to the capacity of the particular health facility. So you need to ensure that when you are asking for a particular rate, that you have to ensure that you have a commensurate facilities within that entity to demand that kind of a price. So I don't know if there is a need for the association to impress upon the members to ensure that, okay, when you demand something, ensure that you have the facilities by which the insurer will be comfortable in offering that. So I think there's room for improvement, there's room for smoothing the entire process. But then there is a more transparency that is required. Both sides understanding that these are commercial activities. The hospitals need to make profit to survive, so does the insurer. And we can't fleece the customer or the patient or the policyholder. We need to give them a good product at a reasonable price. It's a challenge, but I think it is doable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thanks for emphasizing on the hospital's needs and at the same time giving room for improvement as well.
Yeah. Your voice is not audible. Can you increase the volume? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Hope I'm audible now.
Yeah, it's slightly better.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing all the valuable inputs. And we are glad we have a representation from IMA Vice Chairman Dr. Ravikumar is also listening. They are the ones who represent majority of the times in cost optimizations and doing the costing work along with the governments. And having said, these are all Janta schemes involving the government and the office bearers. So we would like them to get more involved and take it forward from this. Hope we will look for some good. Thank you, sir. So can I go to the next session, sir?
Yeah, please, unless you have.
Sam. Yeah, Sam hasn't unmuted.
Kodan,
Yeah.
you also have Mr. Mrinal, who I think is
No. I just waited for you to.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Joseph.
Because I think, look, in the absence of full transparency that flows in, for me, the question I have to Mr. Joseph is what percentage of the total rent, if you give away 30% to a person who helps the distribution of a health insurance product right up front, there's not much rent for the insurer to be good, and there's not much rent for a hospital to provide a good service. So I think transparency sounds like one of the key ingredients or components of a very effective chain, at least to me. I would love to understand what percentage from a payer side of view is around things like fraud, is around things like inefficiency. If we could have that data, at least in your experience, and then maybe we can hear from a technology provider how we can make life easier.
Well said, sir.
Yeah, I mean, we hear numbers about 20% fraud, but then I don't know if there's any study done within India to establish that those are the right numbers. But certainly there is fraud, and you will admit, and so also will somebody who independently looks at it. Now, in the nature of fraud, basically, when you are doing, when you define fraud, there are different ways of defining it. But then sometimes when you are looking after a patient, and the ultimate objective is the well-being of the patient. You want to ensure that he is well and he gets the best treatment, irrespective of what is the contract of insurance. So morally, you will feel comfortable even if the billing is done differently, because you are looking at the welfare of the patient. So the ethical question may not bug you so much as you blatantly produce a bogus bill. So these are all gray areas. But from an insurance perspective, even if you are doing it for the good end, that is for the welfare of the patient, it is not part of the contract. So therefore, there is a challenge. So these numbers, there are studies, I think one can look at those and find out what is happening. In fact, the government's own reports do mention about fraud and the need to control fraud. So I'm not able to say exactly what is the number, but there is a significant amount of money that is getting going lost due to fraud, which can otherwise bring down the price of insurance. But distribution costs, see, most of the insurance which is happening in the terms of group insurance, the distribution cost is far lower. It is in the case of individual insurance that probably the cost of distribution is higher. And I'm sure it is only in a few companies which are probably aggressive have pay that kind of distribution cost, but there are regulatory prescription saying that you can't pay more than X amount, X percentage. So if somebody is paying more than that, then he can be booked. So in a country like India, where insurance is a push product, there is a need to pay intermediaries so that they can go and sell this. Because you look at from the other side, if you don't do this, they will not have insurance. So the financing in the event of a problem which they get hospitalized, they will have to rely on their private sources. So I think you need to pay the intermediaries so that the penetration of insurance, health insurance, improves in the country.
Yes, sir. I hope it has penetrated over the last 10 years.
Yeah, but then we are looking at about 40 crores of individuals who have no insurance whatsoever. And most of the insurance that is being today procured or being offered is through these schemes.
Okay.
So maybe 9-10% is through the private and the PSU insurance companies or on individuals, retail. Rest of it is all through the government schemes,
Okay.
or the state level or central level scheme. So there is a large number of people who, if you offer an affordable product, they will be prepared to probably come on board. But then again, there are issues with selling to individuals. You must have adverse selection.
I think
These are the challenges that an insurer has.
yes,
So
sir.
you need to have an intermediary who can identify and convince somebody to buy insurance. And therefore, I wouldn't say that the cost of distribution is a drain. It is required. And that is why the regulator is allowed that, but there are caps on it.
Thank you, sir.
I hope I have been able to explain.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
So now we pass on to the next session. It is we pass on to we welcome Mr. Mrinal Senha, who is the CEO of Vitraya Technologies. They are a healthcare claims specialist. They are having a settlement platform for all healthcare claims, and they use artificial intelligence and blockchain technology. They work in bringing all three, the policyholder, insurer, healthcare provider, together into a platform, and they have been doing it successfully for prominent hospitals like our in Chennai. They have been doing for Methos, and they've been having many prominent providers on their conclave. So I would like Mrinal sir. Mrinal sir, are you? Sam?
I'm very much here, sir. Thank you.
Hi, sir.
Yeah.
Please explain us about the technology and how people are getting benefited. Healthcare providers are looking for a magic, as a matter of fact, in getting their claims settled.
So, Kotanda Raman sir, thank you very much for your invitation, and Sam, Sameer, thanks so much for inviting me.
Yes, sir.
It's we are kind of delighted to speak about how we can help hospitals, and also a few things that we are observing as changes, which are important for hospitals to keep in mind. I think very often we get, in presentations and in discussions, I think we can get technical, but this country deserves to have good hospitals. I think that's a basic human right, and unless there are good hospitals that provide top of the line treatment, and unless their pricing is able to help them recover the costs, the next tier of hospitals and the tier of hospitals next to them and the nursing homes will not have anything to look up to. And I think you all are right about I think the rates negotiations with the governments and insurers. What my company and I focus on is that, given the rates, how can we make your life easier, and how can we reduce losses for hospitals? We of course can provide a lot of data that can help hospitals with rate negotiations, but assuming that's between you and insurers, most of our work is how you can, in a very easy and simple way, despite whatever the rates may be, how can you get better relationships, commercial relationships with insurers? And that's what our technology platform and products do. So I'll share some numbers for you, because now we work with 800 hospitals across the country, many large hospitals, some smaller hospitals, and I want to share with you a few data and facts that we've noticed. Just in terms of what our scale is, we work with about 800 hospitals. We are settling about 30,000 claims a month. There is something very interesting that we've noticed, that about 30 to 40% of hospitals charge 10% less than what they should charge. So they charge less, about 10% less than what the agreed pricing with the insurer is. Now, I'll tell you why this happens. This is not because people are incompetent. This is not because there's something going on, right? It's a really simple thing. A hospital's pricing runs into 40, 50 pages, right? Each of these 40, 50 pages has like 30 line items across 5 different categories. And the price agreements have been done on Excel sheets or PDF documents with insurers, right? Now, with every insurer, there is the same price list and different MOU discounts that have been written on these documents somewhere. Now, most hospitals, when they use a billing system, the billing system has no connection with this price agreement, right? So what the staff has gotten used to is, if this is a hospital where the GIPSA insurers have more volume, then they are kind of habituated to apply the same discounts to other insurers. Because humanly speaking, it is impossible for a person to look at these 30 pages, 30 line items per page, use it as a reference document, and then check what is there in the bill, because the billing system has nothing to do with the price agreement. And so invariably, a hospital which has more PSU patients than private sector ones will be underbilling to the insurers. Now, we can talk about increasing rates, but what we've noticed is in 30 to 40% of all the hospitals, because the billing system does not talk to the price contract with the insurer, these hospitals lose about 10% of the revenue that they should get. The second thing we've noticed is that a hospital thinks in terms of doctors and medical staff, and hospitals and hospital owners don't attach enough kind of attention to the insurance desks. And the impact of it is that there tend to be a series of errors in terms of even simple questions like, what is the diagnosis, right? Now, just a small sample with you for you is that in about 30% of claims received, the diagnosis that is written by front staff people, and these are some of the best hospitals in the country, right, is AS, right? So when you look at the clinical documents, etc., it turns out that the patient is suspected COVID. The diagnosis written is AS. It's pregnancy, the diagnosis written is ASD, right? If it is, so about 30% of all claims are submitted to the insurer with the diagnosis AS or ASD. What you'll know is ASD are the first 3 letters on the keyboard. And that's why the diagnosis is AS or ASD. And so I think there are technology tools, of course, to help hospitals, but it's important because the revenues are coming in from the insurer's desk, that hospitals must pay a little bit more attention to what's happening at the insurer's desk and how to organize it. Now, these are the kinds of things where, you're not alone and we are there to help you, right? So for example, we've got systems which will automatically implement tariff, and it will compare between what your billing system is and tariff system is, and it will apply the right tariff. It will, do some element of, automated kind of diagnosis extraction, but it's still something that the hospitals need to confirm. So we will still need hospitals to, sign off against that diagnosis, because we are not diagnosing, right? I think hospitals must take ownership and by, use the technology tools, because they are there, bring them in. And we are happy to help. At the end of this presentation, I will share my email address. Happy to sit down with you all and tell you about how we can solve these problems. But at the same time, we need your help to take ownership of the information that you're submitting. Because as different things, as different standards of the government, Ayushman Bharat, etc., will come in, at one point, the party submitting the information is the only one who can take ownership of it, right? So, so we've got all the systems to help you in, so that this process is very easy. Third thing, about 10% of our hospitals, and this is something that we've just begun, we do next day payments and not at 3%, right? So please utilize this, because the whole reason we are doing things like this is that as people in my company, we could have done many different things. The reason we've started this business is we believe that the life of hospitals deserve to be better, because consumers in this country need better hospitals, right? So for that reason, we've in about 10% of our hospitals, we've introduced next day payments. Yes, there will be, a 1.5% fee, for that. In case it is a PSU insurer, it's more. So, I think all of these tools are available for you. These are technology tools. Fourth, in about 3 to 6 months' time, the insurance desks tend to be chaotic. Every insurer has a different way it collects information. And so part of the problem in the hospital is that it's hard to manage that kind of complexity. There are 20 insurers, each insurer will have some 10 TPAs. If you look at the standard tertiary hospital, there are 30 people, 40 people basically sitting and manning that insurance desk. What's about to happen in three months' time is there will be a single standard for Ayushman Bharat and the insurers. Right? So the complexity is about to get reduced. That clutter is about to go away. So all of these technology tools are there. We are there to help you both save money and get money quicker. But at the same time, these initiatives must be driven by, from the very top of hospital management. And that's how we can help you save this money. My company, Vitraya, we work with, some of the largest hospitals. We work with some of the largest insurers, private insurers, and we are happy to do this. I've got a question from Samir. What are the top of mind items for insurance company and TPAs? They keep telling us fraud. What is the percentage of fraud they have seen, and where is it coming from? Hospitals, patients, or just errors? So I think that we've not yet expanded to all of the hospitals, but of the 20%, 30% top hospitals. So there are about 10,000 hospitals in the cashless network. So about 30% of the top hospitals, what's being called fraud is error. And the quantum of error in the 10% or in the 30% hospitals, they are underbilling. In the other 70%, it's the reverse problem, right? Where the largest insurer may be a private insurer, but they are ended up billing this larger insurer rate to all the other insurers. And so the other insurers are accusing them of fraud, right? Because a PSU rate might be smaller, might be lesser than a private insurer rate. right? Now, when they're suspecting this of fraud, what's happening is that the payment cycles are getting delayed, right? So just because you all are not using technology sufficiently, between your price agreements and billing, that specific thing, there is a huge amount of financial challenges that hospitals are facing. And, you know, this is something that when you will look into, right, I think you must look into it, you know, much more closely and deeply. You know, there will also, as you look into it, will be there will be inertia, there will be bias and all of that. But the data is stark, right? That it is actually impossible. You can just think about it. Those, you know, sheets and sheets of paper on which your rates are written, right? But the billing master was set up only once when that billing system was set up. So these two don't talk to each other. In fact, even the item names do not match, right? So the, the price agreement with the insurer may say Operation Theater A, but the billing system will say OTA, right? And it doesn't correspond with each other. So, I think the technology tools the technology tools exist where software will figure out that OTA means Operation Theater A. But please, I think it's important that hospitals invest in time, not so much money. I think the money on a per claim basis is low. Time and intent in terms of solving that channel which brings you revenues, right? And this is a problem that we've solved for many hospitals, and we are happy to get into the trenches and solve it for you. Again, the fraud rates, just to tell you, is it's close to about, or what's called fraud. I think the genuine fraud is about 5-7%, or maybe it's just error where one diagnosis is called the other, and this is happening because the front desk is basically keying in ASD in front of the disease name, and sometimes they've written hypertension because a drop down somewhere is hypertension. So people are not being careful, and so we would also recommend some kind of processes just to make sure that the documents that are going across from hospitals and the entries, they are going right. But to me, more fraud looks like errors than that's all. I think if you all would like to understand how you can improve both your the leakages in terms of this relationship between bills and the agreed prices with insurers, and minimize that loss. And also, if you like to basically get if you'd like to get a platform through which you can submit claims to just about any insurer, including Ayushman Bharat, please feel free to get in touch with us. This is I'm just sharing our email address here for all of you. We are here to support you. I think I've gotten a question that whether you can get to know these things through RTI. The RTI in such an instance will be useless because you need to introduce data systems to be able to even understand what's going on, right? This thing that we are sharing with you, that hospitals that have more PSU insurers end up underbilling to the private sector insurers, right? This is all because of automated billing systems that are crawling data and doing the comparisons. Humanly, this analysis is not possible. So the RTIs will not, I think, yield much, because it will, for the RTI, the government system to probe it, they are not going to use automated system. They'll maybe check one or two. Maybe they will even come back to you and tell you this analysis is not possible. But if you are a hospital, you can do this on your own data. it doesn't even need to be done. It just makes sense that your billing system and the price setting systems talk to each other. It's really simple. That's all. I think this is, this is us, vitreatech.com. We are keen to hear from you and happy to help.
Thank you, Mr. Mrinal. We understand you have been doing a commendable job. Hope it evinces more interest across the 80,000 hospitals across the nation. So we will be keen in having a look at the PowerPoint presentation sometime later as well.
Fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah, how it works and how we can be educated more on all these things.
Absolutely.
Yes,
we
sir.
are happy to help Raman, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And I pass on the Sam.
Hey, I think Satish, we'll jump to you.
Sure.
So Satish, as a quick introduction, is our Vice President of AHPI Tamil Nadu. He's the scion of the very famous Devdas Multi-Speciality Hospital and the ortho. I mean, they're legendary in the world of ortho, but now becoming legendary in other things. And our good friend from Madurai.
Well said.
Thanks, Sam, for your kind words. So we have heard very good evening to all of you, Dr. Alex, Dr. Gyani, Sam, Adel, Dr. Kodan Raman, Mrinal, and the other speakers from today. We have heard about all the challenges about health insurance. I think the last few speakers, both from the healthcare perspective as well as from the insurance perspective. So, but we don't want to hear about the challenges always. We want to have some solutions also. So we need to move forward. So for that, we have three excellent speakers who have been in the thick of things in the healthcare sector, both in the insurance of healthcare as well as in the other activities also, including Dr. H. Nagaraj Rao. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nagaraj Rao as the founder and chief mentor of iServices Alliance Solutions Private Limited. He is an electrical engineer by qualification. Mr. Rao has over 30 years of experience in general insurance industry. He has worked in various capacities, including regional manager of National Insurance Company of India. He's a co-founder of ARC Insurance Broking. And also, he's a pioneer in implementing health insurance in Karnataka. He was instrumental in devising a policy that provides BPL citizens with cashless insurance. A model citizen with a vision to give something back to the community. He's responsible for operating a mobile hospital. And he's also a faculty member of the National Insurance Academy. I think is very important for us today. Only institution in Southeast Asia that imparts insurance education. He's the co-founder of iServices Alliance Solutions Private Limited, a revenue cycle management for the healthcare industry. iServices conducts national level seminars on issues relevant healthcare insurance. We have our national president of AHPI, Dr. Alexander Thomas. He is our founding member and also the founding president of ANBI, which is the Association of National Board of Accredited Institutions, founder, president, and patron of KEHO. He's played a significant role in incorporating healthcare standards and mainly communications in NABH accredited hospitals. He's introduced communication skills in MBBS and PG curricula. He's due to his efforts, insurance IRDA India has made entry-level accreditation mandatory for the empanelment of hospitals, which will result in mandatory empanelment. Currently, 33,000 hospitals. Dr. Alex also expert group on medical education.
Satish, I think it's enough here. They want to hear more of insurance rather than about me. Yeah.
Right. Sure, sir. Let me just introduce Dr. Ravi Kumar also, and then I'll come to you, sir. I think you need to leave a little earlier. Dr. A.K. Ravi Kumar is the third speaker of the evening, and he's the director of Mauti Nursing Home, and he's the vice chairman of IMA Hospital Board of India. He's been a leading voice of the doctors of Tamil Nadu as well as the Indian scenario in IMA. He was presently the Honorary State Secretary of Tamil Nadu State Branch. He's the Vice Chairman of IMA Tamil Nadu Hospital Board of India. And he's had many awards to his accolades. And the main thing is he was one of the first time in the entire country he did a hospital costing study based on government standards 2018. I was very fortunate in working with him during that time. I think we have an excellent line of speakers today. So first I will go to Dr. Alex Thomas, who is also a fellow orthopedic surgeon, sir. And here I would like to ask you, sir, what has AHPI done in this insurance sector for the healthcare? What are we doing from AHPI to help our hospitals and doctors?
Thank you, Satish, and thank you, Sam and the team at Tamil Nadu AHPI. You are actually leading light, and I hope the other chapters learn from you. This is a very useful conference. Also very glad to have as my co-panelist Ravi and Nagaraj Rao. Worked very, very closely with both of them, and it's glad to be on the panel. Now, I'll answer your question, but before that, I think having worked in insurance, looking at it from the point of a hospital, looking at it from the point of the insurance, having worked closely with people in the insurance. In fact, PJ Joseph sir, who was there, he was a member in IRDA when we had a lot of far-reaching reforms. I think it's very, I mean, you look at it very objectively, it's very simple. I think if we all remember that the patient is the most important part of this ecosystem, everything will be all right. We need to have quality medicine. We need to have affordable healthcare. It has to be convenient for the patient. And at the same time, we should not forget, I think it has repeatedly been said here, unless there are financially viable hospitals and financially viable insurance companies, nothing will work. And I think the hospitals and insurance companies should realize that they're both very interdependent on each other. Without, maybe without insurance, hospitals will still manage. But having said that, I think the insurance from a few decades ago, which was about 10 to 12%, is now almost 50 to 60%. So insurance is there to stay. And if hospitals do not survive, then there will be no scope for insurance. I think we need to work together. So I think that is, we should not look at each other as competitors or vying for the slice of the pie. I think it's very, very important that we work together. So what has AHPI, keeping this in the background, what has AHPI done? I think one of the biggest achievements that we have been able to do, apart from introducing communication, which is also part of quality care, is getting the IRDA to insist that all hospitals, 33,000 hospitals at the grassroots, have entry-level accreditation. Initially, when I think Ravi Kumar also was part of me, I was part of NAPH, and we lobbied very hard with the IRD chairman. I was very unpopular for 3 or 4 years because all the nursing homes got up in arms. But I think looking back, I think keeping the patient in focus, I think we need to give them a good deal. And especially at the grassroots, I think there has to be some semblance, some basic criteria for quality. And that is a big step that the IRDA took. And if you look at all over the country, the beneficiaries are the patients. And of course, we are also lobbied with the state governments, with PMGY, to provide incentives for this. So I think today, if you look at it, it is a win-win situation for all the players. For the hospitals, they get an incentive. The patients and the insurance companies benefit because less complications, quality is higher. Now, the other important milestone that happened was, I think we were able to get one of our medical professionals into the IRDA. I mean, you won't believe it, but there was no representative from the healthcare sector in the IRDA committee. So we were able to really work with the IRDA chairman, who is well known to us from Karnataka. And actually, Dr. Ravi Kumar represents IMA and AHPI in the committee. And even though we haven't been able to make much headway, I think the first step that, yes, we are part of it. We strongly disagree with some of their policies and they take note. So I think those two very important areas AHPI can take credit for. We also generally, traditionally, the insurance companies are at loggerheads with the hospitals for various reasons. I think trust is one of it. I think we have to work towards it. But during this COVID pandemic, we were able to work with the insurance GIC, the General Insurance Council, and the HPI. Ravi also was part of that exercise, where we came up with a costing for COVID admissions. If you remember, at that time, the government had started capping, etc. So what we did was we got an independent committee of experts from outside who came up with costing. We gave them the data. Unfortunately for us, when it came up, the GIC sort of washed their hands of it, but it is on document, it is on record that this costing was done by HPI and the GIC, and we use that study even now for some of our legal, when evidence is required. Because this is an area, and I wish and I hope that they continue working with us, because we have to work with each other. You cannot be arbitrary and say that we can't afford this. You have to look at the cost, you have to look at the quality, like many speakers have actually mentioned. I think our biggest breakthrough will be, if you're successful, and it looks like we'll have some progress, is working with PMJ, the largest insurance company. They have promised us, Samir was part of it, we had a few other members. We'll have to wait and see whether they deliver, that they will come up with realistic costs, they will come up with grievance interest, they'll come up with interest payments, etc. Because once PMJ comes in with this, then automatically CGHS and the others will have to follow what they have to, what they do, looking at sustainable rates. So in briefly, if you ask me what should be done, I think very importantly, the insurance should focus on prevention. If we focus on prevention, a lot of curative, unnecessary costs will be cut down. So it will be affordable for insurance and for the healthcare providers. There has to be incentives for wellness. We have also been advocating payment on outcomes. That will also lead to improved quality. And was mentioned earlier, I think we need to leverage technology for transparency. I think transparency is very important. We cannot be opaque in these things. We have to be transparent, and technology will also reduce the costs, and it will make it affordable for the patient, at the same time viable for both the hospital, healthcare providers and the insurer. My advice to the insurance companies, I think this, at present what is being done is, and we have told the GIC this, do not try and divide and rule. Work together with the healthcare professionals and come up with something solid which is useful for everybody. We are actually working with a major private insurance company to introduce the international patient safety standards. And we're coming up with a scheme, starting out with the pilot, saying that if a hospital agrees for this, then the insurance will pay them within 24 hours. There will not be any deductions, etc. I think if that comes, it will be an added milestone and quality for the hospitals. So I'll end with a statement saying that I hope that PMJ will do what they promised. That will be a good beginning for the insurers and the hospitals to work together for the benefit of the patients. Thank you once again for this opportunity, Team Tamil Nadu.
Thank you so much, sir, for the excellent talk. And you spoke about what AHPI and how you have tried to implement so many things through AHPI also. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Now, I'll move on to Mr. Nagaraj Rao, who is from the industry, insurance industry. So here, Mr. Rao, I'd like to ask you a few things about how can we standardize this kind of hospital services? Or are you going to grade the hospitals? Are you going to do rating for the hospitals? And in that way, are we going to give your payments according to the rating or grading of the hospitals? Is it something which is going to happen in the near future? And will it be a standard system, or can we go very badly like the American system, where now I think the hospitals are tending to lose? So what do you think is happening in the Indian healthcare insurance scenario?
Let me be very frank with you. Whenever we approach GIPSA for any of the renewals, which is supposed to be done in once in 2 years, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
whenever this renewal is supposed to take place within 2 years. Unfortunately, no renewal take place in 2 years. It may go to 3 or 4 years. That is one big problem what we have. Second one is, yes, for the same type of hospital in the same city, 3-4 types of rates are given. Maybe there is some sort of, I don't know how you present yourself, the rates are given, not on the based on the procedures, what is going to happen. In fact, in Karnataka, through PEHNA, we try to convince the insurance companies to come to one sort of thing where we can grade the hospital. And unfortunately, it did not go further. I personally feel some grading has to be done, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 categories, whatever it is. Yes, the beginning has been made in Tamil Nadu by the state government when they introduced the employees scheme there. Maybe something like that has to be done. Maybe you have some weightage for the major cities, minor cities, and all those things. And this avoids all the sort of rates given on the whims and fancies. There is no scientific study done, even by the insurance company. They are just going by comparing in this area, what is the rate? I will give you 10% less or 50% less. This is this won't help. And this has really harmed the smaller hospitals. We have 50 to 50 bed hospitals. Really, it is creating a problem. Some sort of grading has to be done. And if we approach as a team together, it should not be a problem. It has to happen.
I'll get back to you, Ms. Rao. Since you're saying there is no scientific study on the rates and costing, we have somebody with us today who has done a fairly decent scientific study on the costing of healthcare products, especially our services. So I invite Dr. A.K. Sivakumar, who's the Vice Chairman of IMA Hospitals, and on what are the package studies you have done, sir, and can you present something to us regarding that?
Thank you, Dr. Satish, and thanks to AHPI for inviting me for this. A special thanks to Samir and other team members. I'm actually glad to say that we have been working together with Dr. Alex, Dr. Gyani, and all. We have been fighting with not only with the private insurance people, also with the government schemes and all. So whenever we go to the insurance people and ask for the rates, package rates, and we used to argue with them that it is not feasible for us to break even. The invariable answer which they easily trash us out is, how do you say that your rates are good, and how do you say that our rates are less? So what happened is we thought we should do some standard studies so that whenever we go and talk with them, they should agree for it. So that moved us to do a scientific costing study, and it started in Tamil Nadu, where we thought if we do the studies with various hospitals, then the study will be not a complete one, because they may say that this hospital is having a 3-star facility, the other hospital is having a 5-star facility, and you have done studies based on that, so we cannot accept that. So what we thought is the standard study could be if we take the government standards itself. So the government, if you go through the Clinical Establishment Act of the India, so they have given categorically about the various types of the hospitals and what are all the basic needs of the hospitals, and right from your manpower, right from the cost, everything. So we took those standards and we started working on it, and we took the IPS standards, that is the International Patient Safety Standards, also to bring in, and we took the Minimum Wages Act as a standard for fixing up the various costs for the employees and other things. So it was a very elaborate study, and when you go through that, there are 2 components in any study. One is the variable cost which the hospital incurs, and another one is the fixed cost which any hospital is incurring. So any hospital needs to study their costing. It is very, very important, which none of the hospitals are doing. Maybe the corporate hospitals and bigger hospitals, they have a team to just financial status of their hospital, they would be doing it. Whereas these smaller and medium hospitals have not done it. And when we took all these studies, I was shocked to see that nearly 10% of the hospitals are charging less than what they are charging. That was the statistics given by the previous speaker. But actually speaking, when we work on the standards, we are doing nearly 50% less than the cost which we are supposed to charge. For example, if a patient is getting admitted in a room in a 50-bedded hospital, as per the government standards, if you work out the costing, that comes to nearly around 6,000 and odd rupees per day. But most of the hospitals are not charging 6,000 and odd rupees per day. If you take an average, I could say about 2,500 to 3,500 is the maximum which our hospitals are charging per day. But if you think how we are able to manage the situation, it is all because of the overwork which we do. As per the government standards, you are supposed to work only for 8 hours a day. How many doctors are working only 8 hours a day? We work for 18 hours a day. We are not charging for that. And you have to work only for 200 days a year. But you people are working nearly 365 plus days. So that is the situation. So when we work out this costing, it was shocking for us. And the answer why we are charging less is merely we are overworking and we are multitasking. That is the status which we got it. And we worked out the costing for various procedures, the orthopedic procedures and the various general surgery procedures, almost nearly around 200 procedures we worked out. And none of these package rates were matching either the private insurance companies which are giving or the government insurance companies which are giving. So we presented all these studies to the Ayushman Bharat PMJAY, and we wanted them to form a committee and include IMA and the AHPI into that committee to do a scientific costing. They very well agreed that the method which we have done and the cost which has come out is absolutely right, but they were not ready to do the study along, including us in that. Recently, when you take the PMJAY, they had sent before the budget, just 2 days, 3 days before the budget, they had sent the package rates which they have derived, and they wanted us the opinion on that. We just like that we refused to give the opinion because hardly within 2 days, it's only for the just a sake of asking the IMA or asking the AHPA, they are sending the list. So we wanted this to be done properly. So I would, what I would say is in IRDA, see IRDA, whenever we talk about the package rates or whenever we talk about the non-payment of the, the pending issues of the pending payments, they categorically wash out their hands. The IRDA or GIC, both of them, what they say is, we don't involve in the packages or the pricing between you and the insurance companies. So we don't have a say there. But
yeah, I think Dr. Ravi Kumar, I think, lost his network, I think. Bhavdani, can you please call him on his mobile and ask him?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So I'll go back to Mr. Rao now. So Mr. Rao, There are a lot of problems where the hospitals face with the TPA. Mainly, I think the turnaround time and the percentage of recovery is one of the major issues. How do you think the hospitals can go and solve this issue? How can we work with the insurance companies and solve this issue?
Two things, sir. One, our documentation has to be pakka. Many cases, because of the inefficiency in the documentation, it is getting delayed. Maybe not very much, maybe about 10 to 15% of the claims may get struck. From experience, after processing about a lakh of claims, we find out at least about 75% to 80% of the claims comes within that 1 month period. This 20% of the claims get struck for a very, very long time. Documentation is highly important. One thing the COVID has brought us a good news is most of the hospital, most of the TPAs are insisting, of course, they are asking us to do the rubber work. We have to upload the soft copies so that they keep at least they process the claim. When once the hard copies reaches them, they are releasing the check. In fact, in America, 20 to 22 days is the normal time for about 80% of the claims. And documentation is so poor in many of the hospitals. Even if you look at the PAs, handwritten PAs, not clearly written, these are hampering the processing. It is like an assembly chain in the TPA office if you go there. If there is a problem comes up, they just keep that file separately till you remind them. Or they send some mail to a general email out of the hospital, and most of the hospital must not have seen it. It may not be coming to the correct person also. There are some problem with us, majority of the problem with the TPA. But here I would like to be very clear, being an insurance company for a long time. The delay in payment is not from the insurance company at all. Nowadays, most of the insurance companies have gone to zero balance account. When once the TPA uploads in the evening, next day morning, the funds are coming to the hospitals. The delay is happening from the TPA side in uploading even the payment portions. And we are also to be blamed. We accept all their terms and conditions, whatever the insurance companies insist. IRDA insisted that in the policy, they should clearly mention if the claim is not paid within 15 days from the date of receipt of all the documents, insurance company is supposed to pay 2% extra interest upon the bank rate.
Wow.
Can you show me one claim where they have paid the interest? In fact, I am getting a feeling, we feel, in fact, in all my conference, I always say this is the only industry where we go, beg them, give them a loan without interest. This is what's happening. And documentation is highly important.
I agree, sir. Documentation is extremely important, as you say. But are there any standard of documentation, like digitalization, where all the companies can come together and say, this is a standard documentation? One person will have a different format, one company will have another format. So our insurance our hospital insurance people get really confused. And each time they have to enter something different. But why don't you digitalize it completely on a single platform and all the companies follow the same kind of standardization so that this will make life easier for both?
I fully agree with you. This is what the first IRDA started was. They came out with a single pre-authorization form which can be used. That has started to some extent a major portion, which can help you to digitize and you want to use the artificial intelligence or the machine learning to process the claim. If the billing is also done in the similar fashion, it reduces the time. In fact, I am using some of the machine learning for processing of the claims at my end. It is so easy. But unfortunately, what is happening, each hospital, if you take about 100 hospitals, each hospital has got a different billing. Now, IRDA also sent some time back a specimen format even for the Richard summary. But none of us are not following it. I have Mr. Alex and Mr. Gyani, sir. It is better we propose them a standard billing format and a standard discharge summary format, which will help in mechanizing the whole thing, where the time can get short and In fact, I'm surprised in many of the hospitals, data are not available. Company-wise, TPA-wise, the data may not be available at all. By having standardization, these problems can also be solved. And moreover, for them also, they don't require a huge discharge summaries. What is the main thing is what they require is, okay, whether the disease is covered or not. That's the first thing what they are going to look. Those things has to be very clear. And there is a lot of scope for standardization. Even I was insisting on IRDA, standardization has to be made even for when they send out the letters of approval or the letters of payment. So that, we need not read it in the hospital, post it to our ledgers. It can straight away go to our ledger from the mail itself, which reduces the work at our end also. There is a need for standardization.
Thank you, sir. I think Dr. Ravi Kumar is back with us. Sir, if you want to continue with your costing study experience, and also briefly touch upon where we are facing some challenges on renewals and empanelments and what we are facing nowadays. So can you touch on that also, sir, apart from your costing? Yes.
Sorry, my network got disconnected. Actually, before just going into that, I was seeing Dr. Nageshwar Rao was telling about the standard formats of the IRDA. Actually, IRDA has given a billing format. And there are 9 clauses in that billing format, which I have already circulated to you all. And this study also we did according to that billing format only. So if we can follow that billing, and everything can be charged. Even the bed sheets which you are using and even the urinal can which are using inside the room, that can be charged. They have given that in the billing format. And if we can do that, this study has been done based on that billing format only. And also this standard, only thing is we are not following, all of us are not following that format. And the discharge summary also, they have given a specific format of discharge summary. But the insurance companies also, they are not insisting on that format, and they just because if they are going to insist on that particular billing format, then naturally the cost is going to get higher. Automatically the cost will move up. So they have to pay that. That is the reason why the insurance companies are not following that. So as an association, what we have to do is, we should insist on our people to follow that format of billing. And once you follow that format of billing, they cannot deny any of the charges which you have charged. So I think the next step what AHPA and IMA should do is, we have to follow the billing format, and also we have to follow the discharge summary format which the IRDA has given. And regarding the packages, definitely we are going to bring out a breakthrough, because IMA, they represent and the AHPA, and I am representing both in the IRDA, and now that the subcommittee has been formed and we are working on it, and definitely we will come out with a standard package rates, how it has to be derived, and grading of the hospitals to be done. And another most important point which I am just putting a thrust into the IRDA is, in an area for that, see, they are creating competition for the hospitals. You may feel that we have to be united. In Madurai, if in your area there are about 10 hospitals, the private and you have enough standards as per the norms of the IRDA for getting empaneled. You are not getting empaneled into the hospitals. I mean, for the insurance companies. They do the empanelment only in the selective manner. This selective manner, how it comes is, they bargain the rates with you, and you agree for the rates which they say, stating that all the traffic is going to, insurance traffic is going to come to you. But if you see the statistics, universal health coverage, nearly around 60% of the population has been covered under universal health coverage. So left out population is only around 40%. And in this 40%, most of the, only few of the hospital, I mean, the few of the population can afford to pay.
most of the populations, rest of the population, they will prefer a high, I mean, they will get the private insurance and they can do it. And if you see the most of the hospitals, almost 70 to 80% of the hospitals, the people who come to you will be only around this 60 to 70% who are covered under the either Ayushman Bharat or the public sector insurance. So if we are going to cater for them, and if the packages are not going to be feasible for you, you will not have any paying patients so that you can compensate the loss which you are going to get in catering for these group of 60 to 70% of people. So in future, this is a very big alarming sign for all of us that unless we all get united, unless we have a uniform system of empanelment of all the hospitals with all the insurance companies, and all the insurance companies, see, if you take the packages, we have umpteen number of packages for different insurance companies. For Star Health, you will have a separate package. If you go for GIPSA group of thing, you have different packages. And they want us to display in the front. The IRDA came forward with that. I strongly objected it, and I asked them to first standardize the insurance companies in fixing up the package rates. Unless you do that, we cannot come, because it's going to be a variable rate. You will have different package rates. And the private patient who comes, who is going to pay from out of pocket also will be seeing that, and you will have total confusion there. So that is the status now. So my message now is to all of us is, first thing is we have to get united, all of us, and the associations should fight with the General Insurance Council and also the IRDA to see that all the hospitals who are eligible has to be empaneled in all the insurance companies, irrespective of whether it is A, B, C, or D of insurance companies. And all the government insurance schemes should empanel all the eligible hospitals. So that will bring down the competition among us, and we can follow the uniformity and the standardization of the hospitals and the packages. If we can come out with this, we can definitely bring down the cost also. Package rates also can come down. One most important thing is we have to remove the third-party administrators, TPAs. They are eating away nearly around 15 to 20% of the amount. And the more number of, initially our IRDA past chairman said that the policy holders are very less. It is the kitty where the amount is there. It has to be distributed to all the people. But the kitty has to be strengthened. How to strengthen the kitty? We should have more number of people taking the policies. So we have even suggested that if a patient gets admitted in the hospital, the whole family can be have a tie-up with the insurance company, and we can make them the policy holders of the insurance companies. So now if you have a deposit in a bank, the bank is having tie-up with some of the insurance companies, and they give the policy. Likewise, the hospitals, we can go forward, or the association, we can negotiate with the insurance companies and see that the patients who come to our hospitals, their entire family can be converted into the policy holders. So that will increase the number of people taking the policies. That is one thing. Another thing is it will be a government policy. We have to fight strongly with the government and see that how a vehicle, when it moves out of the out of the showroom, it gets registered and it gets insured, vehicle insurance. Likewise, any birth has to be insured, health insurance. If that is going to come, almost the entire population will get into the insurance network. They will join the insurance. So these are all few suggestions. I think we have to take it up and we have to fight it out all together.
Very true, sir. So for somebody from Madurai, there is a huge urban-rural divide. I can see most of our rural patients do not get covered by any of the insurance, especially the private insurance. They all go under the government schemes. And we do lose upon, like you saying, the costing there is pathetically low. So we do. So I totally agree with your points. We should be, rather than fighting with them, we should be advocating better rates with more scientific data. And if possible, we'll have to go legally, as AHPA has already done. I think, in fact, AHPA is already having a case in the Madras High Court, where they have the High Court has directed the Tamil Nadu government to do a costing study along with the bigger institutes like IIT and costing institutes. So I think AHPI is doing its bit. However, government will definitely have to listen to us. Along with IMA and AHPI, we have to work towards getting better rates, and so that the industry as a whole will be able to sustain rather than make money, because we are definitely a service industry, and as doctors, we do want to give service, provide service to the patients, but we don't want to make ourselves poorer in that way. We don't want to give money from our pockets and help and service the poor. Now,
one more information, Satya.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Yes,
just
sir.
sorry, one for information, I
Sure,
just
sure.
wanted to share with
Yeah.
you all is regarding the fraudulent practice of the hospital. There is again a subcommittee was formed, and I was also part of that subcommittee, and we have now almost drafted that. And when the fraudulent practice, the recommendations came in, there was no representation for the hospitals to represent to the, where to represent.
Okay.
Do you have any place to represent? You cannot go to GIC. You cannot go to IRDA. So where are you going to represent? Right. So first thing what we insisted is they should form a forum where the hospitals representation must be there, and also the insurance companies, IRDA, GIC, everything must be there. So that was the first step which we took, and that is the recommendation which we have given. Second thing is, regarding the fraudulent practice, we wanted the fraudulent practice being done by the insurance companies also, and the TPAs also, to be included.
Correct.
So we fought with them, and that has also been included. And we are going to have a forum where we can represent our problems. So that movement has been done.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, many a times when the patient's claims is not honored, it is the hospitals which bear the brunt of the patient's ire, because they say, why didn't you get me the money? You have not properly documented or sent it. So yes. I think there probably if the insurance companies can send their people to explain to the patient what is included, what is not, what are the package rates and all. I think some problem there. Mr. Rao is shaking his head vigorously. So what is your thought about that, sir? Because hospitals take the brunt of the patient's ire when this their cashless is denied.
I fully agree with you, sir. In many cases, hospitals end up in writing off. I have many cases where they say that the claim has not come. Maybe you have not done your work properly. If it comes, you take it. Otherwise, it becomes really, really difficult. Many cases you have to write off. But at the same time, at my personal level, most of the TPS having worked under me sometime or the other, I told them, you send your representative to explain. Nobody wants.
Correct.
TPS wants to do the desk job. They don't visit any of the hospitals. And unfortunately, of course, I don't know, the TPS have become just a BPO now. Neither they have the power to settle a claim, nor power to reject a claim. They are just supposed to process the claim as per the policy terms and conditions with the 2016 regulation. Even the money is also coming directly from the insurance company. Now, another problem what we are facing in the hospitals, which may have to be taken up, is we get the money, especially from Oriental and National. Private companies at least very, very less. But we know data are available. In one hospital, they may be having 50, 20, 50 lakh, 20 lakh. Also unreconciled balances. This has become a big issue.
Thank you, sir.
Something has to be adapted further.
Thanks. I think we had a very interesting session. Can I ask for probably time for one question? Anyone would want to ask a question to both the speakers? I think Dr. Alex is not here anymore. Yeah. Sam, do you want to ask anything or?
I mean, I think it's the golden grail of most health and insurance, because this is one of those few platforms where we get a chance to ask what actually happens under the bonnet. Clearly, I think for me, there's a lot of learning. I think it is eye-opening for me to see that we're going to have standardized documentation within 2 months. I think that's one of the best pieces of news that we could have all got. It makes, if you're sitting at an insurance desk of a hospital, life has become a lot easier. That's the good news. If you're a patient, I suspect that will also be really great news. So whoever worked on it, hats off. I guess I have a question. See, how do we influence a state? You take a well-thinking state like Tamil Nadu, where the payers are really, I mean, the government is a really forward-thinking government to a large extent. How do you get them to adopt the latest rates of Ayushman Bharat at a time like this? Because that's something since the start, they have not updated their rates. Is it because most of the schemes they're trying to make it go through the CM scheme, or how would we go about making that influence? Does anyone have a perspective?
Can I add upon that? Your question, answer for your question. Actually, IMA and also the Orthopedic Association and the various other associations, urological associations, everyone, they gave the package rates which was derived to the CMCH project director. I think Satish will agree with it. So we all submitted our rates, and IMA also worked out the rates and we submitted. And we went and had a discussion with the project director about whether these rates has been agreed and have you updated in the current, because now the insurance, they went in for bidding, and the new I mean, the same United India Insurance has taken up the government scheme, CM scheme. They said we have given the premium amount to the insurance company, and the insurance company has to decide on it. Bluntly, they said, and why the hell they asked us to work on this, and they wanted us to give all these rates. And when we inquired with the insurance companies, they said, these will be the packages. We cannot increase the package beyond that because we have got only this much of amount, and this will not be feasible for us to, if we increase the rate, it will not be feasible for us to cover for the entire year. So that is the situation now. But what we cannot just like that leave it. What we want to do is we all has to get united. We have to go back to them. We have to go sit with the insurance companies, and we have to put forward, and we should insist that they have to increase the rates. And the Ayushman Bharat rate, PMJAY rate, again, it is not very feasible. If we just go through, it is not being uniformly followed across the country by all the states. Each state has got their own rates. So we have been insisting with the Ayushman Bharat also that the rates must be uniform throughout the state if they are doing Ayushman Bharat. For that, they said health is the state subject, so we cannot interfere and insist on them. So there are so many things going on, and we are unable to put all those things into a single nutshell and do it. So we are working on it, and it's a constant work which we have to do. And we want, only thing is, we all should get united and then go and fight with them. That is more important. They easily divide us and do whatever they think.
Yes. So I think for CM scheme, we can go and represent. IMA is planning to do that, and we will do that.
Thank you, sir.
We can also
we have one more question from Dr. Nirmal Frederick. Would you like to ask, sir? You can unmute yourself and ask the question. And probably after that, Francis Roy wants to comment on what we did from Tamil Nadu Orthopedic Association.
Thank you, Satish, and thank you all for AHPI for convening this meeting. It's been an interesting deliberation so far. I'm Dr. Nirmal Frederick, and going to be the Vice President of Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, and currently the Chairman of the Insurance Committee at IMA TNSP. Maybe all these problems we've been deliberating for quite some time, and almost all the problems are really repeated, right from costing to the problems with standardization. So I just saw the remarks in the chat box also that there is some hope for standardization because most of the challenges arise from them. So recently we also had a meeting at IMA and discussed these issues, and we think a lot of commonalities. I think the right time AHP and IMA keep working together to raise this issue to the appropriate agencies. There are most of the problem associated with TPA. I think with none of the power existing with TPA either for rejection or I think why do they exist just for sharing the administrative cost and getting a cut from both the hospitals as well as insurance companies. I think the right time we have to tell the companies to directly deal with the hospitals without an intermediate. So that will reduce the cost, and insurance companies also can share some benefit. I agree with Dr. Ravi Kumar sir that increasing the insurance beneficiaries and applicants are needed. That will improve that sustainability also. My question also about the group's view on these aggregators. Nowadays, we see a lot of aggregators like Practo, the Pristine, Medfin, so many people coming out that they will settle the bill and take 30 to 40%. And now the members are really in a quandary what to do and how to go about this. So what is the group's thinking on this?
Do you want to respond? Probably in the cities, it's more happening the Practo, I mean the Pristine and others.
Yes, Sam.
You're putting me in hot seat. Why don't you take Francis's question as well, and then we'll I'll try and form some answer.
Yes, Francis, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Francis Roy from Annai Velangani Hospital, Tirunelveli. I was the EC member of Tamil Nadu Orthopedic Association and then on to be the joint secretary and the immediate past secretary of the Tamil Nadu Orthopedic Association. And now the chairman of the insurance committee of the Tamil Nadu Orthopedic Association. And we have been working on this insurance for nearly 8 years, with deaf ears, I would say, because no revisions have been possible with most of the government insurance providers. And even I think last month we met the health minister and we met also the project director for CMHCS, and we gave the new rates, which was almost 10 times of the rate which they have quoted, because that's how it's working in the orthopedic community. What I would say is two things. One is, as Sir was telling, we are not united. We are not putting a strong, big face in front of the insurance companies with the standardized rates. This is the first thing. Second thing, what I would say is we have a big power of mail. Like we receive mails, all of us providers receive mail from different insurance companies asking for new rates. And most of us have never replied those mails. Or probably about 20% would have replied any mails. Actually, what we have done in our association is we have circulated the rates to all our members, asked them to send. There are 2,000 and odd members in our association. We have asked them to send this uniform rate as the revised rates for orthopedics to these. So I think we have a big power in HPI that if we can get to whatever Ravi Kumar sir's rate, our orthopedic rates, the ophthalmic rates, and if we send, say, thousands of mails to these insurance companies that this is what we are going to follow, it would be a big sound which we are making. That would be, I think, at least present. Because when I was talking with the project director, what he was telling me is, Doctor, you are one person who are coming and talking to me and telling me we need revision. There is no other representation from anybody, hardly 10 or 15 representations. What are the other associations or other people doing? And I think we are not making it felt at where it has to be felt. That's my point, I think. And thank you for the opportunity, Satish.
Okay. So I think a very valid point. Probably HPI will work towards getting all the organizations together to make standard package rates for everybody. And once we are done that, we will definitely go ahead and represent to the government through all the associations of academic associations also from the state. Sam, about this.
I think let's just to wrap that. I think that's a very good idea, and I like the idea that what Mr. Rao also suggested, that if we can come up with an agreed upon method for rating hospitals and an internal ombudsman between IMA, AHPI, so that we actually stop some of the internal misbehavior, at least catch it and call that out where it's not appropriate. I think we will actually be much better than we were yesterday. So if we can make sure tomorrow is better than yesterday from a customer as well as in our case a provider and payer point of view, we'll all be better off. I think I like your idea, Dr. Francis, that if we can actually give a reference rate, it will help. So I think, Satish, that's definitely worth working on, some sort of reference rate by hospitals, even by some sort of grading so that it's fair, and perhaps just have a discussion, because we definitely have the capacity to do that. And just coming back to Dr. Nirmal, I know Dr. Nirmal, you gave me a really complicated curveball question. So look, I don't, first of all, let us be clear, the guys we're talking about are not the Ubers. We all tend to think they're like Uber. When Uber came around, what did Uber do and why did they come around? There were millions and millions of taxi drivers that would take a person from A to B without any sort of regulatory composite authority that was in between. And there were issues on safety, there were issues on pricing, there were issues on all of a sudden a taxi would add a surcharge to the payment. There was no transparency of bill. You didn't know how much it was going to cost to go A to B, right? You travel on day 0 to A to B, it would cost you, let's say 300 rupees, then go on a different day, it's 800 rupees, right? So there was no transparency of system. There was no, you'd roll up and somebody wouldn't have change. So you'd argue that it needed some sort of aggregator to that model that solved multiple small problems. Transparency, it solved payment standardization, it solved pickup points and drop-off point, fairness, and a whole bunch of other things. And to a large extent, we give the thank you for that to a company called Uber. But frankly, there may have been other companies that would have done it at a regional level. In Tamil Nadu, we can give Fast Track some credit for having done it a little bit earlier. I think Practo, the promise of Practo was very different. It was something around, we will give you appointments and we will give you a lot of new patients to your system. And I think for a very short period of time when we all signed up with companies like that, and I'm not trying to identify one versus the other, we saw a slight spurt in volume. The reality is we actually gave power as hospitals to somebody else. And when you give power to somebody else, they will at some point leverage that power and some point also potentially abuse that power. And we have seen our data go to the wrong places. We have seen sometimes a patient or a group have challenges with whether it's an individual hospital, it complains it at Practo, and we're not actually sure who is complaining. Because if you look at some of the data of their favorite hospitals, half of that looks like it's made up, right? So I am not sure giving power as a provider to a third party is safe. We did it once upon a time with journalists and newspapers, we gave them disproportionate power. And then we got something called fake news in Facebook that drives people to commit suicide and drives misbehavior at scale, wrong governments being elected, ... So for me, passing power to somebody, we have to make sure we're giving it to the right person. Giving it to an insurance company that brings me a lot of customers to us, I see as valuable. Giving it to a new sub-aggregator like a TPA, I'm not sure is the right answer, at least from my point of view as a healthcare provider. That's the reality. Is we've given it away to a number of TPAs because not the hospitals wanted it. The insurance wanted somebody to help them manage the processing of those claims. So I think having technology to solve that problem may be a bit better. I'm seeing a lot of these surgical groups now approach us. I call them Practo version 2 and Practo version 3. You may call it different things. They may have real names as well. They are new aggregators to a value chain. So all we've done is, this was a hospital, this was a customer, and maybe somewhere along the line, there was an insurance guy. All we're doing now is we're putting a new party in between all these groups. I am not sure that's going to help us in the long run. But if we don't act together, it's also true and fair that perhaps we will end up with the wrong answer, that it is groups like these that will come up with new rates and they will define the future rates to customers, not us. And it will not be based on cost. It will be based on competitive pricing or venture capital pricing, which is really what any of the companies you mentioned are all VC funded. None of them are accountable to a shareholder that is a customer, right? Their average customer, if you look at the number of complaints on many of these groups, it is disproportionately much more than us. And many of us have been in business for decades, right? And that's, I think, the tragedy of our time, that we listen to venture capital money more than customer money. And I'm not saying anything wrong with the source of capital, but I think that perhaps we shouldn't give power to somebody who may abuse it in the long run.
Yeah.
But I do not know how to solve it either.
I think again we have to be very careful to not let another wolf into our small sheep farm and destroy all of us again. Already we are having a lot of problems. We should, I think, probably stand united and not let some new people like this to destroy us. So thank you very much, Sam. So from AHPI Tamil Nadu, I'd like to thank all the speakers of today, Dr. Giridhar Gyani, Mr. Joseph, Mr. Mrinal Sinha. It was a total eye-opener for this new tech tools, what you have been talking about, Mr. Joseph, about the perspective from the insurance company. Unfortunately, he could have been here for this session. We could have had more questions directed towards him, but Mr. Rao definitely really spoke very well, and he had some kind of solutions and some which he can definitely we can follow. And I thank Dr. Ravi Kumar again for his excellent speech. As usual, he very clearly has put in his points and also how we can go forward and make this health insurance work for us. So I think the bottom line is we all need to stay united. All the healthcare hospitals, AHPI, IMA, doctors, administrators, everybody, we have to stay united and make sure that we make the right kind of noise at the right place and make sure we are heard and what our demands are met. I thank our sponsors for today, Mrs. Sinha's company, and I thank all the speakers once again for being here, and all the people who participated in this 2-hour-long session. More than 50 plus, I think, came for the meeting. It was, I think, one of the first for AHPI meeting. I think it was very nice and very interesting talks and very interesting questions also put forward and the points. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe and good night. Thank you.
Thank you. I think a lot more attended on the YouTube is what I'm hearing.
Too.
But
oh, okay.
I mean, we'll get the exact numbers, but really thanks a lot from all of us. And I think Satish and Kodan, partners in crime in Edel, really thanks a lot with Bhavatrani, who did a lot of the grunt work. So
Yes.
hats off Secretariat.
Thanks to the Secretariat too. Sorry, I missed her. Thank you.
No. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Satish.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir.